Liberal MP. Jason Falinski, one of our regulars on the program, thanks for your time. Now, I know you've got this borderline obsession with housing and Labor's policy. I'm sure you've had to look at this SQM report, Jason Falinski, and it talks about prices maybe falling 4 to 8%. Is the government going to warn about this all that loudly, given, well, we've seen house prices fall under your government?
Tom, look, it's, it's kind of interesting. I was just listening to your previous report, and I think what we saw there is a Labor leader, as you kindly put it, light on detail, but really not ready to govern. In New South Wales, you've got a guy who doesn't know the difference between a $3 billion policy and a $64 million policy, who doesn't understand that Gonski funding is about helping to employ more teachers and thinks he can use the funding to build more schools, who doesn't seem to understand anything about actually running the state. And, that's what we're getting at a federal level too. This SQM report makes it clear that if the Labor Party is allowed to introduce its negative gearing policy, you will see rents go up 22%. You will see housing starts decline by between 25 and 30%. And look, that's what Wayne Swan said would happen. That's what, SQM's saying. That's what the Property Council is saying. And you know what? You don't have to believe Wayne Swan, and you don't have to believe any of those people. That's what happened when Paul Keating introduced the policy back in the 1980s. They say that smart people learn from other people's mistakes. I'd really ask Chris Bowen and his mate Michael Daly to learn a bit more about the problems that we're facing when you introduce such short-sighted policies.
Let's touch on the rental aspect first of all then, because rents didn't go up across the country in the 1980s.
So
when it was rolled back.
that's untrue. No, that's untrue. That's what the Grattan Institute says happened. But it has been made very clear that the Grattan Institute is using a set of data that is skewed towards that outcome. I would remind your listeners and viewers, Tom, that the Grattan Institute was completely funded by 2 Labor governments using taxpayers' money, and they are constantly in favour of Labor policy. What we have seen over and over again is that when the Keating government introduced or removed negative gearing in the 1980s, the policy lasted exactly a year before they realised what a horrible mistake they had made, and they reversed it.
And let's
not forget...
OK, well, hang on. Let me jump in. The other point I wanted to make there, I shouldn't have gone down that particular rabbit hole, but I'm always being educated. That when you look at this policy and increasing 22%, because let's remember this is grandfathered. When is this 22% happening? Because in week 1 of this policy, in the first 6 months, for example, everyone who had a negatively geared property will still have the same rules. They're not going to jack their rent up. If someone's entering their market and they've just got a new property, they can't negatively gear it. They can't whack up their rent straight away because they're competing with the people who do have negative gearing.
Yeah, and Tom, I totally understand your question, and can I say, I learn as much from you too as I hope you learn from me. But the question, the answer to your question on that front is that the market sets a price. So if you and I own an investment property side by side, and I sell my investment property to, let's say, David Spears, he no longer can negatively gear his property, so he's going to have to increase his rent. The minute he does that, he sets the rent in that market for everyone. So you next door to me, or what was once the property I owned next to you, but is now next to David Spears, you will be able to increase your rent because that's the market price for the rent. So I mean,
well, hang on. How is that the market price though? Because that's one house in a market of that stage in the first 6 months, every single other house is negatively geared. You're saying one house shifts every single other one in the street or the neighbourhood?
Absolutely. You are familiar with, the Marshallian demand and supply curve, right? So what happens is the minute...
no one will rent that house because it's too expensive. And Spearsy
But there's no other house... But yeah, that's right. But there's no other house to rent. And he's forced to put his rent up because he's no longer able to offset the losses on that property against his income. And by the way, we're not talking just about highly paid Sky News hosts. We're talking about tens of thousands, firemen, nurses and police officers who utilise this policy on a regular basis. This policy democratises investment in the property market. Sorry.
So are you saying the 22% increase is going to happen, what, in the first 6 months?
I'm not saying that. SQM is saying that. And SQM is saying that this will happen...
Well, they're not saying the first 6 months, are they?
No, they're saying over the 12 months you will see rental prices or rents increase by 22%. And you know what? You don't have to believe SQM. You can look at real world what happened when Keating removed the negative gearing policy in 1986.
What about what SQM said in 2016, that there wouldn't be any rental spikes? What's changed since then?
Well, because they didn't have the detail of Labor's policy. Now they've got the detail, they're able to model it.
We had the policy out in plenty of time, didn't we, ahead of the election?
No, but but we didn't have the detail. That was the point about 2016. No one thought that they were going to win, and so no one really questioned them on the detail of their policies.
Well, hang on, we had the detail, though. With the policy they took in 2016, we have not found out anything new. What have we found out different since 2016?
Well, for example, they've told us when it will apply from. They've told us that it will apply to...
Well, they haven't.
So they haven't said when it will commence. They haven't said when it will commence? Oh, I thought they said from the 1st of July of this year.
No, and all the indications
I'm sorry, I apologise. So they haven't said when it will commence.
Well, accept that as my commentary that it's probably going to be delayed, but we don't have a firm starting date, no.
Well, don't you think we should know when, a policy of this
I'm in furious
monumental
agreement, and we do ask
commences?
them, and we have it on the program, but the commencement date won't affect what it does to the housing market. So what else have we found out since
you were asking... Sorry, Tom.
Well, what's changed? Because that's what I'm saying. SQM were quoted on this in 2016, saying there wouldn't really be rent spikes because of the grandfathered nature of it. They've obviously got a report out now, but I'm just asking what's changed in that detail of Labor's policy.
Well, we didn't have the detail of their policy. They have been far more precise about what it will apply to and when it will apply to it. By the way, we still don't know, for example, if you bought a property off the plan and you're waiting for that building to complete, will that be covered by their policy or won't it be covered by their policy? We don't know. We don't know whether it applies to...
My understanding is I'd have to look at that one, but I think if you've entered into contract, if you exchange contracts, if you like, you'd be okay. Well, we don't have the start date yet, and we are asking them that. But just one more time on that. The actual detail of their policy into 2016... And I've looked this up before. To my reckoning, it hasn't changed. We haven't, they haven't added in detail down the track.
So when the property council undertook, when the property council undertook modelling of this, the thing that they said was that there was a whole bunch of areas that the Labor Party needed to announce how it would apply. They hadn't done that, but they were able to now model it properly on the basis of clarifying comments that they'd made in the previous 2 years, from 2016 to around about the middle of 2018. That allowed them to do a model. The detail, now maybe the broad brushstrokes of what they were saying hasn't changed. However, for example, we've just come across one now where we don't know whether it's if you're under contract, if you've bought it off plan. What happens if a property developer develops a property and ends up in a situation where they take ownership of the property, even though it's new, and then on-sell it to an investor or on-sell it onto an investor? Will they be in a situation where basically they're actually buying it second-hand from the property developer? They haven't made that clear. There's a whole bunch of details, and as you know, Tom, the devil is in the detail with these policies. They can have significant impacts in the outcomes that they have on how many housing starts there are. That's what SQM is saying. That's what the Property Council is saying when they started looking at the detail of Labor's policy. And as you and I have discussed, they really haven't released enough detail even yet.
We'll see, I'm sure. More studies, more surveys on property. I just get that sneaky suspicion before the election.
I think you might be right, yes.
I wanted to just ask you about Michael Daly's comments on housing as well, I suppose you could say. He also mentioned Asians with PhDs taking jobs. That seems to be getting more headlines. The Premier popped off to an electorate with quite a high number of Asian Australians. What did you make of that campaigning strategy?
Look, I don't think it's a strategy. I think it's, as Gladys said, it's an attack on one is an attack on all. This is what we see on the left of politics these days. which is that they want to divide people. They want to tell one group of people that all their problems are due to another group of people. You know, we need to be about building more bridges than we are building walls. Michael Daly has shown that he's happy to segment and divide Australians and tell them that all their problems are due to someone else. And, you know, if this is what he's saying when he thinks no one's listening or when he thinks no one's looking, what else is he saying? I mean, this is the really damaging part about this. We don't actually know what Michael Daly really thinks because he got caught out, and what else has he been saying behind our backs?
Jason Falinski, thanks for your time. Chat soon.
Thanks, Tom. Really appreciate it.